Hello, my name is Olo, this is Rage Gaming, and it's time for a 180. You see, recently on the channel, we've been discussing Rise Endgame and its awkward start, and the potentially lacking difficulty we've faced this time as the Monster Hunter series has given us better and better control over our character, and other really important quality of life changes like those new health potions. But on the other hand, while yes, things have got better for the control of our character, the monsters have also been improved and updated in many ways too. Many versions of these monsters have never been this challenging. With that in mind, I took to Twitter to ask which monsters you thought were the hardest in Rise, and I also asked my own Discord and the Rage Gaming Discord with some interesting results. From here, we took the 5 most popular answers and created a community poll on the channel to hopefully find out what was your most difficult monster in Rise. With 4,000 votes in just 3 hours, I'm pretty surprised by what the result was. So let's start with number 5 with 7% of the votes. It's Rathalos. This might come as a surprise to some who have been fighting Rathalos for a really long time now. Rathalos is no joke in Rise though, feeling more like the master rank version of this great monster rather than the old high rank versions, basically coming from Iceborne immediately to Rise. While Rathalos is certainly more aerial than Rathian, this is just extreme. He's zipping around constantly, harassing you from great distances thanks to the incredible speed he can move during his flight. And I think a major part of this new version is his accuracy. Where Rathian is predictable in the rare fire shots, Rathalos here is blasting them out constantly and often directly at you. Best shown in that super move that gets me the best, the loud wind up before suddenly a burst line of bright fire dealing massive damage and sending you flying. Even able to delay this attack a little to catch you out where maybe previously you think you've moved out the way. Nope, this one's got you. With this Rathalos, the pace is just fast, the range of attack is massive, and he's up and down in the air constantly. I can say with certainty that this is my favorite version of him so far, to challenge our new mobility in Rise in a brilliant way. So I wasn't surprised to hear so many people had struggled with him, and I'm really glad that he's getting some respect again as a tough fight in Rise. Next up then at number 4, with only slightly more votes, at 8%, it's Diablos. God, I remember my first time against Diablos as a new Monster Hunter during World's release. It was a perfect mid-tier challenge to up the difficulty of the game and kind of let you know that things are going to get harder from here on out. This time, however, Diablos has been made one of the last monsters you'll fight. He's actually in the 7-star of high rank hub, and with this version I think it makes sense. He's got some big damage, that familiar brutal hitbox, and the rock solid tail end you're going to bounce off constantly. That high damage can often even two-shot you, especially if you're silly and wirefall during a charge or even a double swipe. But he's actually improved in Rise with moves comparable to the Bloodbath Deviant version of the monster. We can see that with the great and crazy flip tail slam, which also sends a rock flying as a projectile. I really love that move, it just looks so cool, and it comes straight from Bloodbath Diablos. This is something they've done with a bunch of monsters in Rise. We think it's to help balance the difficulty. You know, we have that greater movement and of course the wirefall from knockdown, so increasing the base difficulty of high rank monsters is going to be really important. With a bunch of the monsters, they've improved them in this way, taking them to a higher tier of monster from what they were. We see that also with monsters like Toby and Anjanath. Rage was letting me know that Diablos would probably be one of his top picks, with this version able to suddenly cart you easily if you make a single mistake. At number 3 then, with 16% of the votes, we have the name in question that I brought up in my original tweet. It's Zinogre. Like I said in the tweet, Zinogre genuinely challenged me in my first hunt. Maybe I wasn't ready for that lightning and rage. I was definitely enjoying the visuals and enjoying the soundtrack again. The visuals of Zinogre have been a bit all over the place in the past. He kind of looked like a blob and a blur in GU, clearly outdated and in desperate need of an overhaul. In World, we saw this very cool, more angular version of him, but in Rise, we do return to its more original design, but with an updated feel. The moment it enrages, we see the air rippling with energy, the hairs are standing on end, and those bright blue eyes are filled with fury. It's just a cool monster, man. But in regards to difficulty, I think it's an interesting one, where it's very hot and cold. This was the first monster that actually got me to cart in my original Rise playthrough. What caught me out was trying to wirefall out of a knockdown. This guy just keeps swinging and swinging and tracks you dangerously well. And this is what made me realize I need to just stay down sometimes when I get hit, and I shouldn't overly wirefall as soon as I take a hit. It's sort of a bad habit that I developed. I think the devs were aware we would often rely on wirefall a bit too much as players, and want to make sure they could punish us if we overly do it. Again though, this is another monster that seems to have additions comparable to its deviant version, in this case the Thunderlord. In this version, he's able to control the lightning more directly and effectively by using lines of lightning to shoot out directly towards you, or catching players out by delaying his lightning attacks in various ways. The number one thing people have said to me about Zinogre though was just how scary it was as soon as it's in its lightning and rage, and in large part that's from the Thunderlord moveset. Coming in at second place then with 23% of the vote, this was a surprise to me. It's Magnamalo. Magnamalo is the flagship fight of the game. It has its high damage, intense mechanics, all from a combination of many other monster attacks sort of slammed into this new monster. To me, it's a shock that the flagship actually lost and didn't take the top spot due to its pretty brutal nature and really cool design. I mean, I really like this monster, from how it looks and the way it works. The weapons and armor are incredible, and honestly, I just think this is one of the best monsters ever created. The way it uses the tail like a spear is so cool, while matching many of the attacks with their Hellfire effect for sort of two-pronged attack. It feels more like we're fighting a living bomb. No, not the B-52 bomber Basil, who sure has lots of bombs attached to it, but a genuine bomb that's ready to pop at any time. It's really clever with, say, a tail thrust that's instantly puffing out explosive Hellfire to pop seconds after. That spiral shot that it creates with a spin of the tail for a tunnel of explosive death, or just the trail of the Hellfire gas whenever it's running around. You have to watch out for the first hit and then the second hit. But it also has raw combat ability with the Zinogre-like slam combos and flipping tail whipping, or the incredible dive bomb, which could just be a regular sudden attack, or the super version that should remind us of Nergigante, to say the least. Brilliant fighter design and mechanics, and I love it, but it hasn't made the #1 spot. It isn't considered, by your votes anyway, to be the hardest. Why is that? I think a large part of it might be because we fought Magna in the demo. We had a chance to learn the fight under pretty extreme conditions, where we had no skills on our equipment, no status effects on our weapons, and a pretty limited supply of items. And it was all under a pretty strict 15-minute kill timer. So no matter what happened, if you fought the demo version of Magna, the full release is going to feel easier because you've got a lot more time, got a lot more supplies, and you actually have skills. So maybe that affected the vote. But who did win the vote then? Who was voted the most difficult monster in Rise? The #1 spot was, with a whopping 46% of the votes, Almudron. I gotta know, what's your first reaction to hearing that? Do you agree or disagree? For me, this is a total surprise. I thought Almudron was really cool, but not this difficult. Almudron is an extremely long monster, and therefore the range of its attacks are absolutely massive. So it's hard not to accidentally get hit whenever he moves around. With a wide range of ability and attacks, this mud monster is like a earthbender, making use of the terrain and using it as various weapons in different ways. Terraforming the land to create platforms or even massive pillars, or create that sort of mace weapon for itself. It can slow you down in the muck like Jura or Baroth, but with added danger thanks to that superheat it's able to generate from the tail. These pools become these like pools of lava that sap your health while also slowing you. So it's pretty dangerous with these pools constantly mixed with regular attacks and movement to always be on the lookout for. It can even send out those big waves that you've got to avoid where possible, which certainly does encourage great use of the wire bug simply for movement and evasion, and I really like that. It's a great design. On top of all of that though, Almudron is a very hard to predict monster. It'll often trick you with a sort of big wind up and then slap you with a claw suddenly. And of course it also delays many hits for an incredible amount of time before suddenly smashing you with a big attack. And don't forget the major attack where it leaps up into the air with the mud ball mace and brings it down on you with such force that the range of that hit, the hitbox of that attack, is huge and it's really hard to avoid. That's an easy count for sure. But yeah, having said all of that, truly, the hardest part of Almudron isn't its moveset for me. The hardest part for me is just how hard it is to predict this monster. And maybe that's made worse for me by the fact that I was trying to parry it with my longsword after all. Having a shield would definitely help in this fight, or any weapon where you can block for safety. But in no world would I have listed Almudron as the hardest monster in Rise, just the hardest to predict. With all that said, you might be wondering about a certain monkey boy who isn't on this list. You see, his name did come up a few times, but a lot less than I expected. It's Rajang. I think a big part of why Rajang might not feel as scary in Rise is because we've just come off the back of fighting Furious Rajang in Iceborne, and now we're coming to Rise with just regular Rajang. Only now we have our new movement and better control. The Wirefall obviously coming in clutch occasionally. It just makes him more manageable and less threatening, while also being an easier version than Furious Rajang. No doubt he's still a tough monster, and it is very reasonable to consider him for this list, but for those reasons, I think that might be why he wasn't coming up quite as much as I expected. In closing then, I have to tell you guys, I would have listed Magnamalo at the top of this list personally. While I don't struggle with him now that I've had plenty of training in that demo, he absolutely did destroy me in the demo. It was such a challenge to try to push him to a kill within 15 minutes, let alone survive the fight without skills and low health where you could often be 1 or 2 shot. Sure, in the full release of the game, it's not as intense, but I still have to concentrate during the fight and maximize every window of opportunity that I can. And for that, I love Magnamalo. It's a great fight, and he would have been my number 1. What about you guys though? Who's your number 1 for the hardest fight in Rise? Is it different to this list? What would you have changed? In any case though, subscribe for more Monster Hunter content, hit like if you enjoyed the video, and until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.